Hi guys, it's Mrs. Clifford. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Obviously not in school today, but I wanted to go ahead and finish up your Factors of Industrialization notes, and so I'm recording my lecture for you. If you could pause the recording and grab your notes out, and when you're ready to finish up filling in your notes, go ahead and press play again. So we've already talked about three ingredients already. We've talked about the fact that the United States needed raw materials and energy to be able to industrialize, and we definitely have that. We had large amounts of coal, oil, and iron reserved across our country that we could use for factory purposes. The second thing you need are a large labor force, and we talked about the influx of immigrants coming into the United States during the late 18th century, early 19th century. We also talked recently about the migration of farm laborers to factory jobs as well. Yesterday, you guys talked about the need for financial resources, money, to be able to fund and start up many businesses. The next ingredient that you need are cheaper costs of production. If you're going to be making a large amount of product for a large customer base, you've got to make it as cheaply as possible. You got to make it affordable for the larger public to buy. You're not just focusing on a wealthy group of people, you're trying to focus on everybody. And so in order to provide that product cheaply, you also need to make it cheaply. During this era, and as you learned last week with your Age of Invention assignment, there were a lot of inventions that came to the fore that helped to speed up the production of goods and also make things more efficient. So last week we talked about the idea of rapid manufacturing as part of that definition of industrialization. There are also a lot of techniques that were created to speed up the process and help to create more product through rapid industrialization. Let me show you some of the inventions that were really responsible for this industrialization. This one may not seem very exciting. This is a lubricator for a steam engine. Just like many machine parts during the industrial era, they needed to stay lubricated or well oiled to continue to run smoothly. And by creating this one simple invention that helped to prevent breakdown of machinery and help to keep a factory or a steam engine on a train running to keep the economy going. This is a more exciting invention here. As you can tell, this is clearly an invention that we use today, the light bulb. And if you think about it from a daily use purpose, that's pretty obvious. But if you think about it from an industrial purpose, having a lit factory would allow you to create a night shift. And you don't have to stop production when the sun goes down. You're able to continue production 24 hours a day, producing that many more products. Clearly, with a light bulb, you are going to need the power source for that light bulb, and that would be electricity. And being able to install electricity into a factory allows you to use complex machinery that can get the job done faster and more accurately than human hands. This is an old-fashioned typewriter, and if you think about how that would be used in industry, helping to keep records, labeling, marketing purposes, making sure that accurate records are being taken, no mistakes through handwriting can be dealt with. And many of you may not have seen these before. Nowadays they don't really exist in homes, but this is a telephone, and obviously for businesses it has a lot of benefit in terms of reaching out to customers, taking orders, customer service, and even within the business, communicating between departments and making sure that information flows that much faster. Couple of techniques to help speed up and cheapen the cost of production. The first technique is the assembly line method of production. This was perfected by Henry Ford. You've heard of the Ford automobile line, and we'll talk a lot more about Henry Ford's assembly line strategy next week. The second technique that is essential to the United States' industrial era is the Bessemer process. And this is something you came across last week in your Age of Invention assignment. I cannot emphasize enough how important it was to be able to mass produce steel. Steel was used in everything from railroads to trains to automobiles, skyscrapers, everyday tools and products. The problem was it was so hard to make and took so long to make a batch. It was too expensive and too rare to be used in large amounts. And that is until Henry Bessemer, who was an Englishman, came up with a way to make steel in 20 minutes instead of 6 days. Let me go ahead and show you a quick video that gives you an idea of the process, and then we'll talk some more.
In 1800, Britain was producing 3,000 tons of steel a year. But very soon, demand was outstripping supply. Everybody wanted steel for their engineering, expanding railways, shipbuilding, the larger tugs. The problem was eventually solved in 1856, when Henry Bessemer invented a process for producing mass-produced steel. This giant machine is a Bessemer converter. It can convert 25 tons of molten iron to steel in 20 minutes. In 1855, Bessemer experimented with a vertical converter, but in 1860 he patented this, the fast-acting tilting converter.
This was the breakthrough Sheffield had been waiting for. The Bessemer process could convert high-phosphorus local iron ore into steel. No more need for Swedish iron.
Now, really quickly, I just want to pause the video here and show you that this huge container is where you would pour your melted iron. Now, iron comes out of the ground, and it looks like a rock, and the problem with iron is that it's mixed in with a bunch of gunk. There's phosphorus in there, there's sulfur in there, and that weakens the strength of the iron when you just use it purely like that. So the goal of making steel is to heat up the iron and then take out the gunk, scrape the gunk out that kind of rises to the surface, and then you've got pure iron, and that's what we call steel. You add a little bit of carbon to it, and you've got a much, much stronger material than just plain old iron. So this big container here has got the melted iron, and what it's going to do is they're going to introduce oxygen. The oxygen helps to separate the gunk from the pure iron. So take a look.
Sheffield was poised to become king of steel. The bowl is tilted down, and low-grade molten pig iron is poured in through the mat, then swung back to vertical, and a blast of air is blown through the base of the converter, through the liquid metal. The low-grade iron is high in carbon, and the hot air burns off the excess carbon. A spectacular 10-metre flame and fountain of gases shoot out of the mat. When the iron is purified, the bowl is tilted down again, and the newly made steel teamed or poured out into ladles and cast into ingot moulds. Bessemer steel was an engineer's dream. A material for everyday use stronger than iron. And within 20 years, Sheffield alone was producing 10,000 tons of Bessemer steel a week. That was a quarter of the UK output. It was used for machinery, for railways, for household goods, everything.
All right, so as the video mentions, you hear they talk about Sheffield. This is a city in London. Bessemer, as I mentioned earlier, is the Englishman, but his technology, his ideas were in use in the United States as well. And because we had such availability of iron, we were able to really capitalize on the Bessemer process and make tons and tons and tons of steel to help feed our country's infrastructure. All right, your final ingredient for a industrialized country is you need customers. If you're going to be making tens of thousands of glasses or tens of thousands of irons or tens of thousands of pocket watches, you need tens of thousands of customers. And back in this era, there are no TVs. There are no handheld digital devices. There are no computers to advertise on. There's not even radio at this time in history. So if you're going to advertise, you need to find a different way to do it. You also need to find a way to reach a large audience. You need to find a way to be able to advertise and distribute your product across the nation. Well, we've already talked about the influence of the railroads. We know that the railroads make it possible for you to be able to ship your goods anywhere you want. I mean, just look at this picture. You can see, as I've told you guys before, the spaghetti bowl of railroads. And just imagine how many people you could reach with a product just by shipping your item on the rails. Now, how are they going to know about your product? Well, back in that day, the newspaper was the main currency of information back then. In fact, it was such an important part of people's lives that they actually came out with 2 editions every day. You had the morning newspaper, and then you had the evening edition that came out later with any kind of updates from the morning edition. And as you can see, companies started to buy space in newspapers to put ads in for their product. And you can see the products that are being advertised here. If you are a subscriber to a magazine, you would also see advertisements, just as you do still see today. And you probably recognize some of these product brands. Billboards were an important source of advertising, especially in an urban setting. Obviously, you're going to reach a lot of customers, a lot of eyeballs, as they walk to and from work or up and down the street every day. And they use the same techniques today as they used back then. You can see in this billboard they've got a celebrity who is endorsing this particular product. Here's another example of a magazine ad. But there was one person who really capitalized on reaching a nationwide market. And his name was Richard Sears. If you've ever been to the Sears department store, that is the founder of the Sears department store. And Richard Sears used to work for the railroad, and he thought that there was got to be a way that you could harness the availability of the railroads to reaching large amounts of people. But the question is, how do they know what you're selling? And so Richard Sears is pretty much the first Amazon.com, because he created a mail order catalog. And what he did is he would publish these catalogs, deliver them into the mail all around the country, and you could use these catalogs to order anything you needed. Anything. It didn't, even if it was something that you couldn't find at your town's general store, you could just go into your Sears catalog, send an order through the mail, and they would receive your order, process it, and then deliver your package to you through the railroads. This way you could reach anybody all around the country. And as a customer, you could buy anything you need. If you went to your general store and they were out of detergent, well, you could order it from the Sears catalog. And it just really opened up commerce in our country and made it less of a local event and more of a national economy. The final ingredient that you need, and we're going to talk about this more next week, is you need some really smart minds, some great entrepreneurs, some great business minds. We'll talk more about these gentlemen next week. But at this point, what I need for you to do is if you could please take out your video guide from a couple weeks back. We were watching an episode of America, the Story of Us, and there were about 4 questions left to answer, numbers 24 through 27. If you could please take that video guide back out. When this video is over, go ahead and click on the next one. That will give you the segment that you need to watch, and please answer the final 4 questions. Hope you have a great Thanksgiving break. I'll see you on Monday.